So you reported that there is reason to believe that Cruzs might have just used his campaign funds to boost his sales for his latest book, Justice Corrupted. Can you
Hmm.
tell us more?
Yes. So Cruz's book debuted at number 9 on the New York Times bestseller list, and it was accompanied by a dagger, which the little print says that means that booksellers have reported receiving bulk sales for the book. And a lot of times when you see candidates doing that, it is from political funds. Recently reported that not a candidate, but Jared Kushner
Mhm.
had that, and we were able to pretty much nail down that the payment came from his father-in-law's PAC. So here you've got Ted Cruz had that. We won't know for sure based on his campaign finance report. It's not due until January, but he has a record of doing this before. After his last book came out, in the 3 months after it came out, in the 3 months after it was published, he spent his campaign reported spending $153,000 on books at Books A Million. Now they wouldn't get back to me on what book that was, but I would imagine, if it was a book other than his own, they probably would have been quick to let me know. And Ted Cruz ended up getting a $320,000 book advance for that book. So we'll see. This new one, I believe, is part of a 2-book deal that's going to pay him $1.1 million. So, keeping an eye on his campaign, other affiliated PACs and political committees to see if they're the ones spending. I mean, it is possible that, some IBM just decided, hey, we're going to buy hundreds of copies of this and give it out to our employees or something. But it does seem likely we're going to see campaign funds were being spent on this.
So why would he buy the book? Is it just to get on that New York bestsellers list?
Well, there's that, and making the advance payment back. He's going to go ahead and have to sell enough of the copies of that book to pay back that advance. And if you can all, spending a couple $100,000 of your campaign money to do it is certainly a good step in that direction. But yeah, there certainly is the ego, and we saw that a lot with Kushner, where Ivanka was on there bragging about Kushner being a bestseller and putting it out there. And, they didn't mention that there's the dagger or any of that stuff, but
Of course
it does
not.
allow you to say New York Times bestseller.
So when he did this before, did he get in any trouble for this?
Not that I know of.
And what's the legality behind it? Is it murky or is this against the rules?
The FEC has ruled that candidates can buy copies of their books with campaign funds if they do so directly from the publisher in a way that they will not receive any royalty or would not go to work off in advance. So what's different here is that the books were purchased through a retailer, Books A Million, in which case he most likely would earn a royalty or work towards paying off that advance. Now, if you do need to buy it from a retailer, it has been allowed that the candidate can take the money that they would have earned from that book sale and then donate it to charity, and the FEC was fine with that. So that would be a way that the senator could do it. That would be legitimate, but we're not going to know for sure, and we won't know for sure unless the FEC or some group decides to investigate it.
And there is some other book news in your newsletter, Checks and Imbalances, and that's from the South Dakota governor, Noem. Can you tell us about it?
Yes. The National Republican Congressional Committee was advertising her book to donors. It was donate $35 or more, and they will send you an autographed copy of her book. Hurry up, there's only 99 left. 3 days later, it still says the same thing. Hurry up, there are only 99 left. So either that's not accurate or no one's donating. But the interesting thing, again, it was the National Republican Congressional Committee, and Noem is not in Congress, hasn't been in Congress for about 4 years. So it was really interesting to see why they were promoting her book. There are a couple other Congress people whose books they're putting out there right now, Jim Jordan and Dan Crenshaw, and both of them are Republican congressmen. So that makes sense that the NRCC would be promoting them. So I haven't heard back as to why they decided to buy that book. It did briefly touch a New York Times bestseller list, but it was one of the lists that does not flag bulk sales. So we don't know for sure if there were any bulk sales. In South Dakota, campaign finance laws are not all that great in that candidates do not have to break down what their disbursements are. So if Governor Noem were to spend campaign funds on the book, we wouldn't know unless they were willing to tell us, and they haven't responded.
So it is interesting that they're hawking her book because she's not a member of Congress anymore. So does this speak to maybe her rising star within the GOP?
Sure. I mean, they wouldn't be hawking the book if they didn't think it was going to sell copies and encourage donations. So there's certainly that. I mean, she's another person who we should consider to be shortlisted for any potential run by Donald Trump. I don't view her as being much of a candidate nationally. I don't think she, going back to whether people have been vetted all that well, there's just not a ton of media attention in South Dakota. And we've already seen a couple ethics issues pop up with her in terms of helping her daughter get a professional license. So her travel, she's been flying all over the place on private jets that have been coming through from campaign donations as well. So she might have a hard time in that, but is a Trump vice presidential candidate, sure, she'd be really well, and she's well sought after. You're seeing that with the fact that she's been flying all over the place. That is, Republican groups across the country are having her come out to go speak to them.
So, Zach, where can people find your newsletter?
Sure. We are at Checks and Imbalances. So if you just Google Forbes Checks and Imbalances, you will come right to us. You can sign up. It is free. It goes out usually on Tuesdays and Fridays and has the best of Forbes's political and money and politics reporting.